A very warm welcome to you all, and thank you once again for tuning into the show today. My name is Chef Andy, your host, and today we are going to be playing with some very beautiful techniques. We're going to be bringing some different touches of plating, some different touches of preparation, and of course some different touches of also ingredients that we'll be working with. We're going to be making a very simple wet fry beef today. I'm also going to be showing you how to just plate this in a very systematic way, which will be pairing that with some boiled potato and a very simple avocado and cherry tomato salad. But before we do get that far, I'll begin by introducing the ingredients before us. So from the very front, you've got 1 bullet chili, 2 cloves of garlic, and 1 medium-sized tomato. You're also going to require 2 peeled carrots, 1 red onion, and some iceberg lettuce. You'll also require about 150 to 200 grams of some cubed beef fillet, 1 ripe avocado, 2 potatoes that have been cleaned and peeled already, sitting in some water, some salt for seasoning of course, some cherry tomatoes, some fresh coriander there, some water which you'll be cooking your potatoes in, some chicken stock, some peppers to crush, and last but not least, some oil to cook with. So we're going to take a break now. If you're going to be taking notes, this is your chance to grab your pens and papers, and we'll catch you after a very short while. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. If you're just catching up with the show, we've just introduced the ingredients before us. And just to recap on what we were introducing earlier, we're going to be doing a wet fry beef. We're going to be pairing that with some boiled potato. And last but not least, I'm also going to be doing a very, very simple avo and cherry tomato salad. Now we're going to start off the very simple process by cooking our potatoes. So to this beautiful pot in front of me, you will proceed to add some water. Add in your whole potatoes as well, and proceed to season with some salt. Now, very important to make sure when boiling your potatoes, always allow for the water to just touch the top surface of the highest or rather the biggest potato in there. And that will always guarantee for you to get a proper cooking temperature right through the pot, and also to speed up your cooking process. So I'm going to leave those on the side there. We're going to allow the water to come to the boil. And while we do so, I'm going to begin to heat another pan on the side. And now we're going to begin very simply by chopping up our medium-sized onion. Proceed to chop that as fine as possible. And proceed to do the same for your second half. And proceed to finish off. And always make sure not to include the root end of your onion. Remember, that will never actually cook and tenderize, so very important to make sure not to incorporate that small piece. Now, secondly, proceed to add some oil to your pan. And we will begin by adding our red onions. We're just going to allow that to finish sweating very, very briefly on the pan. And something also I would like also to mention, particularly if you're going to be boiling potatoes, remember they actually have a very, very bland kind of color. So I'm just going to infuse that with a bit of some turmeric powder. Remember that will give it a little bit of an appearance, and you will all be able to tell right at the very end. Remember, sometimes if you're making food, you may actually have ingredients that have a very bland color. Simple ingredients like turmeric powder or maybe some saffron will actually just bring out the color of your dish, and it also improvises and gives it a better finish when you're plating. So we're going to allow our potatoes to continue undisturbed, and in the meantime we're going to proceed to prepare all our other ingredients for the wet fry. I'll begin by chopping coarsely some garlic. Proceed to chop that a little finer if the pieces are still too large. Right, so once your garlic is chopped up, proceed to add that to your pan. And using a wooden spoon, just proceed to mix your ingredients together. And just as soon as your onions just begin to get that beautiful caramel color to them, proceed to add a little bit of some water and allow your pan to just cool off very, very briefly. And while that proceeds, we're going to proceed to chop our tomato. So very important to remember, begin by coring the stem, root end, and you proceed to discard. Now we're just going to chop that very, very coarsely. So that should be about 1/8 of an inch in size. Proceed to add that to your pan as well. Now while still at high heat, proceed to toss your ingredients together in your pan, allowing for your tomatoes to break apart. I will also be incorporating some chili, but because of the necessity of not needing it to be very hot, I'm just going to seed those chilies very, very gently. You can also do so by just using the tip of your knife, and against your board you can proceed to scrape out the seeds. And be sure to discard your seeds at this stage. Remember, those bring in quite a bit of a surprise with the heat, so you may want to make sure not to combine those at all. And now proceed to julienne your chili. And you can proceed to add that to your pan. Now at this stage I will not proceed to add any more water. We'll introduce chicken stock to the dish. Remember, chicken stock particularly has two very distinct advantages. First of all, it's a very good substitute to water, always a necessity in most kitchens, especially even in the professional world. Second of all, it is a better alternative to adding water in that it actually carries a bit of nutrient. And for the fact that it has already been parboiled, it means it's actually a little safer to use, being that it's already sterilized. But something very important to mention, if you're going to be using stock, try and make sure it's fresh. So please don't attempt to use stock that's almost maybe 3 to 4 days old. It may not actually be beautiful and tasty as you'd expect. And second of all, if you're going to make some stock, be sure to take your time to do so the right way. Plenty of recipes on stock making in previous episodes we've done on this show, so you can actually check out our Facebook page or our YouTube page. You should be able to find some very good recipes just to make a very, very simple stock. Another thing also to mention, stock is made from bones, so remember it does contain a bit of a gelatin in it. So if you do have people who are consuming the dish and they may not actually be people who are consuming white meat or any particular meat for that matter, be sure to mention that the dish does contain chicken, beef or fish stock. It will actually be safer, and you could actually reduce any chances of poisoning any of your diners. Right, so our mixture is just slowly cooking away in the pan. Just going to use this spoon to aid me in breaking up the tomatoes. And once that's almost completely reduced in quantity, we're going to proceed to scoop out our tomato and onion mixture, and we'll just pour that into a bowl on the side. Now this is only partly cooked for the fact that we are going to return it back to the pan shortly. So I'm just going to allow that to rest on the side. And you can proceed to return the same pan onto the heat. Now we're going to proceed to brown our meat very briefly. But just to aid us in drying out our pan a little faster, always a little handy to have some kitchen towel to do so. Right. Now proceed to add a little oil once more. And at high heat, proceed to brown your meat. Making sure to break the pieces up once they hit your pan. And you can allow anywhere between 4 to 6 minutes for browning. And in the meantime, you can use a fork and very gently proceed to check for doneness of your potatoes. So I'm just going to prick those with a fork to make sure those are a little bit further. So we're going to allow those to continue. In the meantime, I'll bring your attention back to this pan. Now in the pan, I've got about 150 grams of some cleaned out beef fillet. Remember, you can alternatively use a cheaper cut if you cannot particularly be able to afford beef fillet. Remember, this is a prime cut, costs a little higher than most cuts of meat, but you can actually substitute this by using some sirloin or even some rump steak. It will give you something similar in taste, but it may actually save you the extra cost. Now just proceed to brown your meat. And at this stage, proceed to season with some black peppercorns. And proceed to toss once more. I will also mention you may not want to add salt at this stage because remember your dish is still cooking. You may want to take or hold on to that and probably add that a little later once your flavors are fully combined. Right, once your meat is browned and almost fully cooked, this should actually be about rare at this stage. We will proceed to add our onion and tomato mixture back into the pan. And you can proceed to toss that to mix. And proceed to add some chicken stock. Right up until you get to the rim of the pot or the pan. And we're just going to allow that to proceed to simmer at high heat. Be sure to also give it a mix before doing so, just to make sure your ingredients are evenly spread out in your pan. And we're just going to allow that to continue simmering undisturbed as well, bringing us to the first break. So we're going to also be taking a break very shortly. And we're going to come back a little later on where you're going to be able to now see the last and final finishing process of this beautiful wet fry. And we're also going to finish off the potatoes, but I will not single you out. You will be able to see the last and final step as we work our way towards the plating. So please don't touch that dial. We'll be right back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who are with us just before we took the break, we've just been finishing off some of our dishes here. So we still have our wet fry on the heat. I'm now going to proceed to remove the boiled potatoes. And I'm just going to set those aside and allow them to cool briefly before plating. And you can proceed to discard the rest of the water. And now just to bring your attention back to the wet fry, now the liquid has been reducing gradually. The meat is tender now, very, very soft as well. But we still need to finish this very simple dish. So to this, we're only going to be adding some freshly chopped coriander. And for this, I'll chop them a little more coarse and a little larger in size. Proceed to add that to your dish. Season with some black peppercorns. And of course some salt. Give it a nice thorough mix. And you can at this stage allow for the rest of your liquid to continue cooking down until it's almost completely gone. But very importantly, always remember to toss your mixture over. Remember that always allows for an even spread of heat around your pan. Also allows for an even cooking for your meat. Now we're going to proceed to the plating of this very simple dish. And for that, I'll be plating on this very, very beautiful plate. Now we're going to begin by plating our salad. So very, very simple technique. I'm just going to proceed to open up a few leaves of lettuce. You can almost arrange them into almost the shape of a small, maybe almost a small little container or a bowl. And you can set that over your plate. You can reserve the rest. Proceed to also core out your avocado. So very, very simple technique. Just begin by the bottom end of your avo and proceed to work your spoon almost all the way around the base, almost like to scoop it out. But all you're going to do is use your spoon to go around your avo and right between your avo piece and the shell. You should be able to lift that very, very easily. So you can proceed to place that right over your lettuce, like so. You can reserve the rest of that. And now a very simple technique of garnishing with a bit of carrot. I like to use a peeler for this process. You can turn that off as well. So very, very simply with a peeler, just proceed to almost peel some very, very thin sleeves of your carrot. And you can always proceed to use the pieces that are more from the inner part of the carrot. Remember, those are always a little better for show, and as well they always give you a nicer all-rounded shape. So very, very simply, just by arranging those over your fingertips. You can proceed to lay them right over your fingers like that and proceed to fill that hollow in your avo. And last but not least, proceed to also slice in your cherry tomatoes. And you can proceed to drop those right in the center. And of course, very importantly, remember salt always brings out the sweetness of an avo and the tomatoes. So drizzle some of that over the top and finish off by grinding some black peppercorns. Now next up, we're also going to begin to plate our wet fry. So very importantly, always give it a mix before you proceed. And using your spoon, proceed to plate that to one side of your plate. And just proceed to scoop out the rest of your dish. So as you can see, for about 150 to 200 grams, this should give you a nice, generous adult size portion. Right, so meat on the plate, salad on the plate. Now very simply, proceed to also finish off your potatoes. And I like to just break off a few of the leaves from the coriander. And very simply proceed to chop those very finely. Now this is basically just a small addition to garnishing some boiled potatoes. As I mentioned earlier, sometimes it is a bit tedious or unappetizing to actually look at a very plain potato in a plate. So very simply, proceed to add your chopped coriander to your bowl. Add a small pinch of salt. Drizzle a tiny dollop of olive oil, almost actually about a quarter of a teaspoon. Add your potatoes in and proceed to toss those in the bowl. Just right up until the point your potatoes are now coated in the coriander. And you can proceed to move those onto your plate, setting them right on the side adjacent to your beef wet fry. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my simple take on beef wet fry with boiled potatoes and an avo and cherry tomato salad. I hope you managed to enjoy yourselves today as much as I have. And I'm actually now going to enjoy this a little more as soon as we call it a day. So I will bid you farewell, wishing you a lovely evening. Also wishing you a nice, beautiful dinner for those of you who will be cooking this evening. And if you are going to be thinking of going meat, then why don't you actually try and go wet fry for this evening? So thank you once again. My name is Chef Andy, bidding you farewell. Until the next episode, God bless and see you soon.